Hello, Mr. Zonker here, and this video is on operations with scientific notation. That means adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing numbers in scientific notation. Let's get to it. For multiplying and dividing, we want to multiply or divide the standard numbers and then the powers of 10. If multiplying, remember the powers of 10 will add. If dividing, the powers of 10 will subtract. After you get your answer, make sure the decimal only has one digit in front to keep it in scientific notation. Let's take a look at a couple examples. Here we've got 1.6 times 10 to the 6th power times 2 times 10 to the 3rd. First thing we could do is take these standard numbers, 1.6 and 2, and then this 10 to the 6th and 10 to the 3rd, and group those together. That's going to give us 1.6 times 2 and 10 to the 6th times 10 to the 3rd. Multiplying that out, we'll have 1.6 times 2, which is going to give us 3.4. Then we have that 10 to the 6th times 10 to the 3rd. 6 plus 3 is going to be 10 to the 9th. And there's our answer, 3.4 times 10 to the 9th. How about division? Let's try 6 times 10 to the negative 5th divided by 8 times 10 to the 3rd. Just like multiplication, we're going to group these separate parts together. Here we've got 6 divided by 8 and 10 to the negative 5th divided by 10 to the 3rd. 6 divided by 8 is going to give us a 0.75. And when we're dividing with the same base, we have negative 5 minus 3 to give us that negative 8. Lastly, we want to make sure that digit has one number in front of the decimal place, so we can move that decimal over one spot. And since we're making the number bigger, we need to make this number smaller by subtracting 1. That gives us an answer of 7.5 times 10 to the negative 9. Moving on to adding or subtracting. Now when you add or subtract numbers in scientific notation, there's a couple different methods. The first method is to expand or write it in standard form, then just add or subtract like normal, and finally rewrite it in scientific notation. The second method requires that you rewrite with a common power of 10. You can group it together, add or subtract, and then make sure the answer is in scientific notation, moving that decimal and changing the power if needed. For our first example, we're going to be adding 4 times 10 to the 3rd and 2 times 10 to the 3rd. Our first method means that we want to take these and write them in standard form. 4 times 10 to the 3rd is going to move that decimal place 3 times, 1, 2, 3 to get 4,000. 2 times 10 to the 3rd, same thing, 1, 2, 3, 2,000. Then we've got 4,000 plus 2,000, which is going to be 6,000. And finally, to rewrite that in scientific notation, 1, 2, 3 spaces back, we would end up getting 6 times 10 to the 3rd. Our second method involves grouping that 4 and that 2 together. Notice we already have 10 to the power of 3, which means we can go directly to group that 4 and that 2 together. Here we have 4 plus 2 times 10 to the 3, and then 4 plus 2 is going to be 6, giving us the same answer we got before, 6 times 10 to the 3rd. Notice we could only go directly to grouping because these had the same power, in this case, which was 3. Our next example is going to be a little different. Let's try those same two methods using the expression 3.2 times 10 to the negative 4 minus 1.6 times 10 to the negative 2. In this case, we'll rewrite both of those in standard form. Our decimal place would move 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, for 0.00032. For the next set of parentheses, we have 10 to the negative 2, move that decimal twice, 1, 2, to get minus 0.016. If we subtract those, we'll end up getting negative 0.01568. Last thing we need to do is shift that decimal place once, twice, which is going to give us a negative 1.568 times 10 to the negative 2nd power. For the second method, notice we have different exponents. Here we have 10 to the negative 4th power. Here we've got 10 to the negative 2nd power. The first thing we want to do is get those to be the same exponent. You could change to either one, but in this case, I'm going to change it to a power of negative 2. So what we did here is we moved that decimal place over once, twice, making that number smaller, which is going to add 2 to that negative 4 to get 0.032 times times 10 to the negative second power. We can leave the second set inside the parentheses the same because that already has a power of negative 2. From there, we can group those standard numbers. We've got 0.032 minus 1.6, all times 10 to the negative second power, and then subtracting those, we should get that same answer, negative 1.568. That's this minus this, times 10 to the negative second power. Just like in the last example, if this decimal was not in the correct place, you would have to move it accordingly and change that exponent as we go. All right, everyone, I hope this video was helpful.